So sometime during middle school or high school, they introduced to you the idea of complex numbers, and basically what it says in is, if for everything that you know from school that you couldn't solve prior that had a negative in it or square root of a negative number, now you can solve for it using this little concept right here: I is equal to square root of -1. So we're gonna use the same concept to write this whole thing right here, as a complex number. So let's see what they gave us. They say that you write 5 square root of -16 as a complex number using I is equal to square root of -1. So if I have I is equal to square root of -1, let's see if we can square both sides of this thing. So let me go here for a little bit. So if I square this guy right here and I square this guy, so I'm not doing anything special. So I squared would be equal to square root of -1 is -1. So you may already know this, because sometimes usually they would write I squared is equal to -1. So what we're going to do here is we're going to replace that I squared inside of this -1 parenthesis. So what we're going to end up with is 5 square root of -1 here. I'll replace it by I squared. So I have I squared, that -1 that was in front of the 16. I'll replace it by I squared times, I still have the 16. Okay. So now how do we solve for this? So 5 gonna stay by itself. So the square root of, so you have two numbers, the square root of two different terms. So the square root of I squared and the square root of 16. We can separate those. The square root of I squared multiplied by the square root of 16. Okay. So let's go on this side right here. So 5. Let's put a parenthesis for this. 5. What's the square root of I squared? I, right? What's the square root of 16? 4. So 5 times 4 times I. 5 times 4 is 20. 20I. Okay, and that's it. This is it. That's all we have to do. So what did we do? We know that I is equal to, we started with the concept that I is equal to square root of -1. We square both sides. That means I squared is equal to -1. Actually, sometimes when you presented a problem that have complex numbers, they just tell you to assume I squared is equal to -1. So we know that. We plug in that -1 inside of this thing, and we solve for everything. We end up with 20I. Let's see. Yeah, 20I is choice C. That's it. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with somebody you know that this might help. This is your host, Romel, with the Jax Tutor. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.